Have some big news to tell you today. What a weekend full of big news. And we start the DLLS Rangers podcast with the news that the Rangers have signed Sam Haggerty to a minor league deal and an invite to spring training. Okay, so maybe that doesn't, maybe that pales by comparison to the Luka news or what's happening in New Orleans with our Cowboys crew. John Radigan here, Jeff Wilson there. The Prophet's still recovering. One of the reasons we're remote today is the Prophet's still not feeling great. But here we are, Jeff. Man, I was busy all weekend watching the other teams as well as our own. It's been a wild ride.
The Luka trade just kind of blew the doors off of the whole area, I think, and. I know a lot of people still can't believe it. It's happened. He's in LA now, and like it or love it, I don't think anybody likes it. I think maybe if they win a World Series, they'll like it. But gosh, I don't, or not a World Series, NBA title. But I just don't. Yeah. I just don't know how you trade one of the top players in the league.
No, especially a young guy for an older guy, and they both sort of have the same injury issues. I mean, that's for them to discuss, although I don't know how many people, I think I'm one of the few that still get the hard copy edition of the Dallas Morning News, but I've never seen this. I should have pulled it up here. The entire front page has only pictures and a few words about Luka. Nothing else on the front page except the Luka trade. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And, so my first thought is they're crazy. Then it's like, okay, there has to be something. There has to be some reason that nobody's going to go on the record about that this happened. And, you saw pretty quickly the weight thing, how he weighs 270 pounds or whatever. There's got to be, more to it. Are they scared that he's going to be the next Zion Williamson, who was never good anyway? Never the player Luka is. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot more to it that none of us know about.
Almost always is in those cases, and truly, it may never come out because they don't want.
I have one out for Luka, John.
Oh my gosh! All right, I'll crack one open. I mean, hey, it's tradition when we do a pod from the house, right?
That's right. I mean,
and by the way, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, So
it is. This is later than normal for us, so it feels.
It really is.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get to Rangers because there's a lot to talk about there. We're only about 9 days away from the start of spring training, which is always super exciting. And with the weather we've been having this weekend, Jeff, I'm like, wow, this is baseball weather, isn't it? They do spring training here in this weather.
Yeah, I'm wearing shorts and short sleeves. I'm usually bundled up, and it's not going to last. But when we get to Arizona next week, I did a look ahead. It's going to be upper 60s, lower 70s. Perfect opportunity to get in some baseball. And but yeah, I really have the itch now. Really have the itch.
Yeah, I do too. I actually played golf yesterday, which also gives me the baseball itch. They seem to kind of go hand in hand weather-wise and all that. So, all right. Absolutely. So, yeah. So we've got the, we've got the discussion of the internal improvements. And I mentioned, tongue in cheek, but it's true. Sam Haggerty, a former Mariners utility guy, has signed with the Rangers a minor league contract. And that there's going to be a lot of things like that that go down between now and the beginning of spring training. But certainly, Jeff, there will be a lot of those smaller moves that happen between now and the end of spring training.
For sure. And, I would give Mr. Haggerty very little chance of making the opening day roster. He's a depth piece. Will probably end up at AAA if he doesn't find a job somewhere else toward the end of camp. I mean, that's part of the reason why these guys go to a camp on a minor league deal, is to hopefully catch a scout's eye and at some point convince the scout and have him convince his team that they can't live without Sam Haggerty or Jesse Chavez or Tucker Barnhart, guys like that. And so that's part of the spring training puzzle. Rangers won't stand in their way if that's what happens, if they get a better opportunity to go somewhere else, which again happens every year. And we'll see how this plays out. But he's kind of a handy guy. He's a little bit older. He's not a young guy. He's not old by any stretch, but it just hasn't clicked yet, and that's kind of who he is, I think. And not to say that if he does end up going to AAA, you wouldn't see him in the major leagues at some point. But I think this is just kind of a depth piece and an opportunity for the Rangers to maybe not push a prospect to another level from, let's say, AA to AAA. It's something like that. And these guys are valuable to an organization.
Yeah, and when you bring up the fact that a Haggerty or a Barnhart or a Jesse Chavez, might be one of those things where you tell another general manager, hey, you can't live without this guy. I'm trying to think, are there any GMs in baseball named Nico or Harrison? It seems like maybe that name is you can make a decent deal with. It seems like Rob Pelinka did. Anyway, internal improvements. We got to talk about this. We've talked about it a lot over the course of the the off season, but this is the time when these internal improvements have to begin to take root, right? We have to start to see these things. And so, when we talk about the internal improvements, I think the first ones and frankly, the most likely ones are the guys who are completely healthy now off of injury, right? So you're talking about Jacob deGrom and Josh Young and maybe to a lesser extent, even Adolis Garcia.
Yeah, well, I think that you nailed it right there. The Rangers had both underperformance last season and injuries. You can have one, you can't have the other. So I would think that, Josh Young being healthy would be critical for this team. Adolis Garcia, who was hobbled, it seemed, but struggled, be huge for him to be good. And I think the big difference here this spring as opposed to last spring is that all of these guys are starting camp more rested than they did a year ago. They were still coming off the World Series last year, and some of them, like Adolis, who was injured in the World Series, didn't have his normal offseason. Josh Young showed up to camp healthy, and that lasted about 2 hours, and then he hurt his calf. Corey Seager had just had hernia surgery. Basically, I think he had it on January 30th last year. So, he's barely a year removed from that, and he had another one in September, but he's fully recovered from that. And then, of course, Evan Carter being healthy. How's he gonna figure into this puzzle? Excuse my dogs. We have 3 of them and they're fired up. So anyway, it's just that's where it starts, being healthy. And then you throw in Jacob deGrom. It's like, holy crap, this guy won 2 Cy Young awards, was the best pitcher in baseball, and people still think he is the best pitcher in baseball when he's healthy. And so I think that when it comes to all these preseason prognostications that are coming out, betting odds, whatever you want to say, that have the Rangers, among the top, let's say 10 to 5 World Series contenders. It's legitimate, and I think a lot of it's built on Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, let's take a look at that list, Prophet, if we can. One of the different services, there's so many of them out there, but it has the Rangers listed as the 6th best odds. Now, look at the Dodgers at over 20, almost 21%. But look, Dodgers, Braves, Yankees, Orioles, Cubs, and then the Rangers. I love the fact that this one, anyway, has the Rangers ahead of the Astros, which basically means, Jeff, that the Rangers win the American League West. Although I say that, they didn't win it in 23, and they still made it to the World Series. So,
right.
But we'll assume that they win the West, and then they move on and have a good chance to go to the World Series. Look, these things are nice to see. And as a quick aside to those of you in the chat, we got a whole segment on trade possibilities coming up. So we're going to get to some of those suggestions that you guys have been making about trade possibilities. That's coming up, I think, in our 3rd segment today. So hang with us there, and we'll get to that. But as far as those odds and that team being as good, it's almost everything you see, Jeff. I see things on MLB.com like who has the best starting rotation in the American League West? All these different independent people, they look at it. Oh, the Rangers do. Oh, who has the best lineup in the American League West? Oh, the Rangers do. Now, again, I haven't seen that as it pertains to a bullpen. But that said, when you've got the best starting rotation and the best lineup, you got to feel like that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't think those necessarily account for the inning shortfalls that the Rangers are facing out of the rotation. They may have the best rotation, but
yeah,
they definitely have some questions, and all teams do. I mean, the Astros have rotation questions out the wazoo. The Mariners seem pretty solid again in their rotation, but this is on paper, everybody healthy. This is a really good team. It's basically the team that won the World Series. Plus, you're getting a full year of Jacob deGrom in theory, and that's what PECOTA. Which I always have to look this up. It stands for Player Empirical Comparison and Optimization Test Algorithm. So basically, it just projects performance of individual players. And how it does it, I'm not sure. But the Rangers have good players. There's no question about that. And if they can perform over the majority of the season, we're not saying Jacob deGrom needs to start 33 times here. But if he can get 20 to 25, Rangers will be doing cartwheels, and then go with deGrom, Evaldi. Don't forget about Tyler Mahle. I know we keep forgetting about him. The Rangers love this guy. There's a reason they signed him, knowing that he was going to be hurt and barely able to pitch in 2024. It was a 2025 play, and so keep all those things in mind, though. But yeah, it looks really good for this group.
It really does. It's an exciting time of year in that regard, right? You have a team that is mentioned in the class with, again, all those top tier teams, basically the other, almost in the top 5 of teams that are expected to compete for a World Series. And the nice thing is when you break it down, we've talked about that internal improvement so much, Jeff, and I always kind of think, yeah, man, we're asking a lot of guys to make sure they're better than they were last year. But when you think about it, there's only a couple that underperformed. Most of them were actually in some way or another tied to an injury.
Yeah, well, okay, you're right. Marcus Semien was healthy all year, and he did not perform very well. And he was at a huge spot in the lineup, the leadoff guy.
Right.
Adolis Garcia did not perform.
Yep.
Middle of the order, cleanup guy, supposed to knock in Marcus Semien, who wasn't getting on base. And then when those two knocked into each other, I know it was in May, but that thing caused some problems. And then at the bottom of the lineup, when Leody Taveras and Jonah Heim weren't producing, they were on base a lot of the times in 2023 from the top of the order, where Marcus Semien and Corey Seager were MVP runner-up and third place finishers. So, yeah, it needs to be better. You need to have guys on base ahead of your big hitters, and when the big hitters get on base, you got to have guys behind them producing. So You figure Josh Young will figure into the, let's say, 5 through 7 realm in the lineup against right-handers. Against left-handers, he may be the cleanup guy or bat third. Wyatt Langford, a full year of Wyatt Langford. I mean, really, if you look at Wyatt Langford's numbers, knowing that he was not a rookie, or not, assuming not knowing he was a rookie, just if Wyatt Langford, you just look at his numbers without the name attached, you're like, that's not a great season.
Yeah,
it's good, but it wasn't great. And so Wyatt Langford has a chance to be a really good player and to improve this year, and he should, because he won't be playing from behind for the first, 3 months of the season while he's getting to learn all these pitchers. So there are a lot of reasons to believe that the Rangers lineup is going to be really good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fun. It's exciting. It's sunny out. It's a great day to talk baseball. And this is not a team that is now suddenly thrust into turmoil. So we've got lots more coming up, including in the next segment, what some of these guys are doing as they get ready in these final days before spring training. And we've also got that segment on trade, possible targets, and possibilities. It's next on the DLLS Rangers Podcast. I'm about to test, Jeff. I'm about to give our listeners and our viewers a test of the Shady Ray return policy. Now, I haven't had a big problem with the Shady Rays, but where they connect to your ears, I don't have them up here, but there's a little bit of rubber on here just to make it softer on your ears, right, when you put them on.
Yeah.
And it's come loose. And I thought, well, they got this return policy. I think I'm going to haul off and send them in, and I'll let you know. I will, and I'm sure that what Shady Rays is going to do is just fix that or replace that arm and send them back to me, and I'm going to be super happy because they've got a great return policy. They're good-looking glasses. They are, one of the reasons I wear them every day, pretty much. So one of the reasons that the little rubber arm has come detached is that I wear them so frequently. But in any event, let's test that out. Let's see how it works. I think it's going to work well, and I'll let you know. And in the meantime, you should get a pair because there's a chance to get 35% off if you go to shadyrays.com and use the code DLLS. Shady Rays.
Sounds like the rubber hit the road.
It might have.
Yeah, a little dad joke for you. Anyway, dad joke aside, it's game time. The app where you can go and get tickets to anything you want. Not just our area, which of course is very handy for people living here, but we're talking Super Bowl tickets, baby. I tell you what, John, prices have decreased, which is often the case as games draw closer. I don't see any 9,000s up here. I see a couple 7s and a 6,900. So still looking at a pretty penny, but you can just go to Game Time and get one of those. I wonder how Mav tickets are going to be pricing here in the next few days, especially after their hangover yesterday in Cleveland. Looks like they had the same feelings about the trade as everybody else. But anyway, download the Game Time app today and use the code DLS, and you will get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
So a quick couple of notes. Speaking of the Super Bowl, which Jeff did during the ad read, our crew, our Cowboys crew is in New Orleans on Radio Row, and they're doing a great job there. And so, if you haven't checked them out yet and you're one of our viewers, check them out tomorrow. Pretty sure they'll be on at 11, but you'll see stuff on social all day long. It's just they're doing a great job over there, and it's it's the center of the NFL this week. So our NFL guys are all over that. Also, shout out to our Mavs crew who at midnight or thereabouts went on the air on Saturday night, and Bobby Carella and KG, Kevin Gray and Tim Cato, man, they were just killing it. And what we loved is so many of you were there with them. I think there were as many as a couple of thousand live viewers when they did an emergency pod at midnight on Saturday night. And so, we know, and we love that, because we know we're the place to come when things break. And literally, as I saw the news come, Jeff, I was starting to lie, just lying down in bed. And I told my wife, I said, well, if this was if this was Rangers news, I'd be getting up, I'd be putting a DLLS shirt on, and I'd be out there because that's how we roll. And I was really proud of the way our Mavericks crew rolled.
Yeah, when I checked in, there were 2,118 live viewers.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
At midnight. So, there are a lot of people not sleeping or who were at the bar or whatever and saw the news. And, good for our Mavs crew. They're great to begin with, but good for the diehards who are realizing that DLLS is legit, baby. You didn't see anybody else going live, right? You didn't see any other of the outlets going live moments after this trade happened. So fantastic job by them. And we'll have our lives. We had our live show with the Nathan Eovaldi signing, and it was a hoot. We had a lot of people come on, and never know what's going to happen in spring training. I'll be out there in Arizona starting next week for my first of 3 trips, and who knows what's going to happen. But something always does happen. That's the thing about Major League spring training. Something always happens. So, and if you want to make sure you follow it, of course, we'll do our diehard offer a little later in the show. But you can get in for $48 right now. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. So
that's a great deal. But
yeah, just great for them, and bringing credibility to all of our beats. Rangers. Stars are great. Stars are I would say they're a Stanley Cup contender at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. They had a big trade this weekend too, and they bolstered their defense significantly. So yeah, right. They did. They had a great weekend.
Yeah. So newsy weekend, newsy week. We might have a big surprise for you guys later on at the show. Later on in the week. Don't want to say anything just yet till it's confirmed, but. We might have a big show on Thursday. Just plan accordingly.
Yeah, that would be a wise idea to do that. We'd appreciate it. And yeah, I think what we're proving here is, when things happen, DLLS is the place to check out, right? No matter what sport it is. Again, if the Stars news had been, blockbuster style, they would have been on with an emergency pod. The Cowboys have gone on with at least a couple of emergency pods, as have we, and the Mavs have now too. So we're the place to come. And even at midnight, the one thing you want to do when you get hit with news like that is hear what other people who are like you are thinking. And at midnight, it's a little hard to engage very many people, but we'll be there for you if that happens with the Rangers, and we obviously were when it did happen with the Mavericks. So very cool stuff. It's the final week before spring training, and it's next Wednesday, Jeff, that they hit the field, the 12th, right?
Pitchers and catchers, yep.
Yeah, pitchers and catchers hit the field on the 12th. That's next Wednesday, and Jeff's heading out on the 11th, and so we'll have great representation at spring training. And this is, I want to show what happened. Last week was such a busy week, we never showed this picture. But in case you haven't seen it, I want you to see the Rangers are on their way to spring training. The trucks have left, Jeff. And I remember back in my Channel 5 days, John Blake always did such a great job. He would call us out there, and we'd go out there and we'd interview the guys at the moving truck, and right. But it's amazing to see the video of all the stuff that they load up. And there's like 2 or 3 trucks, I think, that do. They take heavy lifting equipment. They take all the bats and all the balls and the pitching machines and so much stuff out there. It's an amazing job. And when we had Jim Cochran on the other day, we found out that Bobby Corella's dad used to be with the company, I think, that did the moves.
Yeah, that's the small world for you. But it used to be a big media event. We had it a couple of years ago, and I was the only one who showed up. So I think they kind of stopped doing it. So anyway, you got to have a production. You got to have the players there to do it. They don't have to load anything. Don't want them getting hurt, but it's always this is a good sign. We're going. Season's almost here. Spring training. Let's go get them.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, it is a sign. It's one of those deals, Fan Fest, the truck leaving in the Super Bowl. Those are the three big ones that it's like, okay, it's time for spring training. And so, yeah, the truck is loaded. It's probably made it by now. I don't know if there are any clubhouse attendants there to empty it. They back it up and they put it in the same spot when they load it to drive it home too. And there's plenty of equipment and surprise, but you need more. And these guys will have their hands full. Brandon Boyd, the equipment manager, clubhouse manager, and his guys. The visiting clubhouse guys come out too. So, all of them will be there, and it'll be a busy few days for them because there are players there now too. Not a lot. There are some who are kind of got there over the weekend. Just want to be there now to get going, and it's mostly only young guys. Like I would assume that most of the non-roster invitees are there now. Cole Drake among them. I know that he arrived Sunday. We're trying to get him to come on the weekly show. So anyway, yeah, I'm ready for baseball. I don't know. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but each one of these things gets me going.
Yeah, and it's a unique situation out there for guys like Brandon Boyd and players too, certainly, but guys like Brandon Boyd, who's the clubhouse manager, who's out there earlier than almost anybody, and he goes into a house out there, and that's a rental that the Rangers rent for him. And I've gone out there before when I've been a part of the rental car fleet that the Rangers get, and they give some of the employees and people, in TV at the time, a car. And it's amazing. You go out in a parking lot, it's like national car rental. They get cars for so many people and houses and all that kind of thing. So awfully cool. And it's just a huge production. And look, it's a long time. I mean, those people, like the Brandon Boyds of the world, they basically become Arizona residents for almost 2 months.
They do. And there are a lot of them, they're not alone. I mean, the coaches don't go home. Once they show up, they're there. Bruce Bochy doesn't go home. So, the players don't go home unless they have a situation like a childbirth or something like that. Jake Berg is going to miss some time this spring as his daughter has that heart procedure done. But yeah, you're in Arizona. You get to then after a few years, every nook and cranny and surprise. You definitely know your way around the West Valley. The East Valley is still a little bit harder for me to figure out after all these years, but I know to get to every ballpark, like I'm just driving down to the local Kroger here. I mean, I can get there. Like I don't need a map, and so, I really like surprise. It's grown on me. As it's grown, it has 120,000 people. I mean, Surprise, Arizona is not just some little podunk town that it was 20 years ago when the Rangers and the Royals first moved out there. There are a lot of restaurants and, workout places and grocery stores and, everything you need you can get in Surprise. You really don't even need to leave there. So anyway, and like I've said previously on the show, if you're thinking about going, like, God, my family needs a trip. How about spring training? Just do it. Absolutely 100% do it. You can find lodging that's reasonable, even if you have to drive. Just get your butt out there. If you have kids who play baseball, they will remember it for the rest of their lives. There's no question about it.
All right, one quick thing about what players are doing this week, and that is, I think it was actually the end of last week, Cody Bradford and Josh Sborz went down to Hillsboro, Texas, and you go, there used to be an outlet mall in Hillsboro, but why the heck would they go down to Hillsboro, Texas? To see Hill College? No. They went down there to see a 40,000-year-old, the skull of a 40,000-year-old mammoth, Jeff, a woolly mammoth that roamed these grounds. There they are with the guys from there in their Texas paleontology shirts, and they were helping to pull these things out of the ground, I suppose, and just kind of getting a real good briefing on and that always is amazing. They've got that park down there, Jeff, in Glen Rose too, where there are actual dinosaur footprints. I mean, it's unmistakable. And when you think about how close that is to our area where we live, there used to be dinosaurs here. I think I'll have to talk to Josh and Cody about it when we get out there. But that had to be pretty impressive to them too.
Sure, the dinosaurs were millions of years ago, but woolly mammoths weren't that long ago. I mean, relatively speaking. And that stuff's cool. Archaeology is neat. You go to a museum, and you're like, wow, somebody dug these up, because it's not like they had some dinosaur in a holding cell for a few years and it died and decayed. Somebody had to dig these up, figure out how they go together, and that's pretty neat. And I can guarantee you that Cody Bradford loved it. Because he's not just because he went to Baylor, which is basically Hillsboro's the halfway point, but he's into that kind of stuff. And Josh Sborz, he's not pitching right now, so hey, you might as well go on down there.
Yeah, and by the way, they named that mammoth Texas Ranger, so he's got a new name. I don't know if he had a name 40,000 years ago, but now he does. We got more coming up as we continue on this edition of the DLLS Rangers podcast. Next, we get to some of those possible trade scenarios, some which, of course, could help alleviate salary issues, some which could just help on the field. We'll talk about some of those next. It's the DLLS Rangers podcast. But first, we talk about FOCO, and right now we don't have any knickknacks behind us that were produced or presented by FOCO, but that may be something we need to work on for our remote locations as well, because they do decorate our sets that you normally see us on in the DLLS studios. And of course, they have all kinds of gear so that you can represent your team. Now, I hope it wasn't any FOCO gear that was burned outside American Airlines Center yesterday, because I don't want you to waste the FOCO gear, but that's how mad Mavericks people were. And so, save the FOCO stuff, because eventually you probably will be a Mavs fan again. But the truth is, the FOCO stuff is so good. Even if you burned it, just go buy some more when you do become a Mavs fan again. FOCO's got great stuff, and it's not just shirts and it's not just knickknacks, but it's all kinds of stuff, and anything you could get, the bracelets and the pens and all kinds of stuff. So go to FOCO.com if you would. Use the code DLLS and you'll get 10% off. FOCO.
And you also get 10% off when you use the code DLLS at ruggedroadoutdoors.com. They are our outdoors partner. They make these great coolers that keep beers cold. John and I have the good fortune today of having a refrigerator next to us, but we have indeed kept cold beer in the one at the studio. They're durable, they're lightweight, they float. They're really the perfect companion if you're an outdoorsman, or just like I always say, a parent of a ball player, and you have to go to the dang tournaments every other weekend. So again, go to ruggedroadoutdoors.com, enter the code DLLS, you get 10% off, and you get a pretty kick-ass cooler to boot.
Along those lines, Jeff, I was thinking this too on Saturday night. I was probably a couple of cold frosty beverages in at that point Saturday night. I was like, that'd make for an even better emergency podcast. What's another reason for you guys to tune in if we've got a late night emergency podcast? We may have a few cold ones in us at that time. Who knows what we'll say? So anyway, Joel, today we're moderation. Today it's simple moderation, but it's like a snow day for us, really, when we're here at our houses and we don't go into the studio and all that. So, it's cool. Yeah. Have a beer for the show.
One other thing about Cody Bradford, he on Saturday was at my son's baseball organization's quote unquote spring training. He signed autographs, and along with Craig Gentry was out there, and they helped out the kids. Cody was overseeing PFPs, and Craig was working with the outfielders, of course. So anyway, it's good to see them. And, they were both so gracious. They took a picture with every kid, signed every autograph, answered questions. Good group of guys here, past and present, with the Rangers. John's gone. John is gone. So I'm going solo here. So anyway, hey, there I am. So we saw what you did in the chat. I saw somebody mention the Wayne Gretzky trade, trying to think of these great, crazy trades that happen in baseball sports history. And the Gretzky one's kind of crazy. But as I recall, he kind of requested it because his wife, the actress Janet Jones, who was in that gymnastics movie, and then nothing else that I can even possibly recall, wanted to move to LA. So we moved to LA and got traded. The one that I was thinking about for the Rangers, and I don't know what you guys were thinking, was the Juan Gonzalez trade. The guy who had won 2 MVPs, who had helped the team go to John's back, who had gone
I'm back.
The playoffs for 3 straight years. I was talking about like the biggest surprise trade in Rangers history, and I said it was the Juan Gonzalez deal.
Yes, it was.
Just trying to think like, all right, this guy won some MVPs. He looked like he was on a potential Hall of Fame trajectory, and all of a sudden the organization decided to shift. Now, later came out that, or it wasn't even later. I think some people didn't understand Juan. There was the pant incident at the Hall of Fame game, and little things like that. But I think when he came back, was it 23? Toward the end of the 23 season, it might have been last year. Shit, I don't remember. This stuff all runs together. It was such a warm reception. He and the club had some friction. It got patched out, and just the reception that he received. And I'm pretty sure the Rangers introduced him 2 or 3 times. Throw out the first pitch. Here's Juan Gonzalez again in his booth, and then here's Juan Gonzalez doing something else, and every time the ovations were just crazy for him. But that's the one that I can think of in Rangers history that was like, whoa, what are they doing here? Trading this unbelievable player.
Yeah, we damn sure would have done an emergency podcast that day. And to your point about the MVPs, he'd won 2 of the last 3 at the point that the trade went down, right? And Pudge was about to win the one that year. But it was, it was pretty crazy because he won it in 96 and he won it in 98. And it was too bad that he got crossways with some of the people in the front office, because he was living here for much of the time through basically the time that he retired until he kind of reunited with the team a couple of years ago, and he just didn't want anything to do with the organization. But I'm really glad that they made amends and that they're back, because Juan was a really good. He had a really good heart. I mean, obviously, everybody's got different aspects to their livelihood and their personality, but Juan had a really good heart. So I was thinking in regard to this segment about a question I saw on Twitter today, and our buddy Mike Bassick answered it so well. Somebody said, hey, put this in baseball terms. What would this be like in baseball? And Mike Bassick said, Bobby Witt Jr. for Mike Trout, right? And the difference would be, I don't know that we've had any real injury history on Bobby Witt Jr., but we certainly have had injury history every year almost on Mike Trout. And again, like Anthony Davis, Mike Trout is a superstar. So is Anthony Davis. But then again, both are in the waning years and days of their careers. And Bobby Witt Jr. and Luka Doncic are very early in their careers. So I thought that was a great point. And then I was actually talking to my buddy Nate Newton yesterday, and he asked me, what does this trade relate to? And I said, I believe that it's the biggest trade ever, first of all. It's going to go down as the worst trade ever in the NBA. I believe that. Secondly, it's going to go down as the biggest trade ever in Dallas-Fort Worth history until something huge comes along. The Herschel Walker trade was big, right? It was big. But the trade for Luka Doncic is even bigger. And again, in the Herschel Walker trade and the other one I'm about to mention, the Dallas fan was on the good side the fleecing, if you will, right? The
Yeah.
Dallas fan was on, the happy side of the Herschel Walker trade when they ultimately got many, many players that became serviceable right away, but also they got the draft pick that became Emmitt Smith, who, by the way, is the rushing champion in NFL history. So, that one was huge. The one on the Rangers side that we've referenced recently, Jeff, is the Jared Saltalamacchia, the Mark Teixeira trade, which brought Saltalamacchia and Elvis and Neftali Feliz and Matt Harrison. I mean, that was huge, unbelievable. We'd done an emergency podcast for that one too.
Oh, 100%. And Tom Grieve made a lot of trades.
Yes, he did.
They traded for Jose Canseco. Ruben Sierra for Jose Canseco. That Jose Canseco at the time was as big a star as you could get in baseball, really. Hitting the home runs and all of that, and he turned out to be a dope. But that was a huge deal. Traded Sammy Sosa, a young Sammy Sosa, and at the time nobody really knew what would become of him, but of course he became a 600 home run hitter, whether it was natural or not. Same thing for Canseco, but there have been some big trades in Rangers history, and some have been bad. John Daniels says the worst trade he ever made was the one involving Adrian Gonzalez and Chris Young, as it turns out, but not because of what became of Adrian Gonzalez and Chris Young, but because the Rangers weren't ready to win, and JD thought they were. And so it was a miscalculation of where the franchise was. But, when the Cowboys traded away Herschel Walker and when the Rangers traded Mark Teixeira, they were building for the future. This was a turning point for the franchise. They recognized where they were and how they were the only way to get better. But then, the Mavs, you just traded the best, one of the 3-5 best players in the game at age 25 for a guy who, like you said, is a good player, 10-time All-Star, but it's just cataclysmic. And so now here's Ben trading Ian Kinsler, is trading Luka to me. I tell you, that trade was made November 20th, 2013. And for Prince Fielder, and at the time, it was like, okay, Jerkson Profar can be the second baseman. Prince Fielder is going to be the best first baseman, even better maybe from an offensive perspective than Mark Teixeira was. And to answer, finally fill in the blank at first base that had been there since Teixeira had been traded. And obviously, it did not turn out well for the Rangers at all. They did get a nice 2015 season from Fielder. He was the comeback player of the year. But that was it. He was hurt pretty much all of 2014. He was hurt again in 2016. Kinsler went on, led Detroit to some pretty, was a great player for Detroit. Won some Gold Gloves, won a World Series with the Red Sox. It definitely did not go the Rangers' way on that one. And of course, the other piece of that is Profar, who was hurt. Right. And nobody recognized it. And so he didn't play for 2 years. And then up came Rougned Odor. So it's, player acquisition, there's risk with everything.
No doubt about it.
And you can usually make it make sense, but this one is still hard to make sense.
And you talk about the one, like that you were talking about with JD and the Adrian Gonzalez, you also referenced the Sammy Sosa, and on coming back from Chicago was Harold Baines.
Right.
And at the time, Tom will say the same thing too, by the way, that's like the one he'd love to just forget about. But at the time, Baines looked like he was the guy that could help put a Rangers team that had built through the, draft and development, but also had some veteran. It felt like he could be the guy to put him over the top. He got here and he didn't want to be here. And it showed, man. I overlapped with him when I first got here, and Harold Baines wanted no part of this place. We'll hope that Anthony Davis does not come in with that sort of an attitude. You know, the Mavericks had a pretty big one back in the day, too, when they traded Mark Aguirre for Adrian Dantley.
Sure, I remember that.
That was a big one. So, and again, we had some misgivings on the part of Adrian when he got here and left the Detroit Pistons. So, anyway, lots of interesting sidebars to this whole trade thing, and it's just had us thinking about it the whole weekend. So, more coming up as we get to our cleanup segment. Man, the show's gone by quickly. I don't know if it's because of this or what it is, Jeff, but it's flying, and hopefully you're enjoying it too. We got more coming. It's the DLLS Rangers Podcast. So you really can't see what we're wearing, but I noticed there was no memo. But yeah, we're both wearing the same thing.
We're twinned up. That's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
You know, the merchandise is so awesome, and now is the time of year, or days like this, or the time when you can just wear the T-shirt. You don't have to put anything over it. You don't have to wear a pullover or a jacket or anything like that. You just come out and you hang out and you represent, and we love doing that, and we love the kind of stuff we have right now. The sale that was on over there at ALLCITY, store.allcitynetwork.com. That sale's over, but there's the new stuff coming out. Thank goodness the Mavs did a Kyrie Irving shirt, and
not a Luka shirt.
Not a Luka shirt. Those would really be on sale. But anyway, there's tons of shirts out there. We've got some ideas for some new Ranger shirts coming. But represent us and represent the area too, right? I mean, this is basically Dallas without the A's, you know. So rep the area, rep us. Go to store.allcitynetwork.com and get your merchandise today.
The Prophet just said there's a sale on an unreleased Luka shirt. So they were getting ready to do a Luka shirt, apparently.
Holy moly. Holy moly.
Yeah, let's try to get some money before we send it to the starving kids in Africa. So anyway, there's also a sale if you want to become a diehard member now. $48. All right. That's a lot off of our normal price of $79.99. Do it now. That's $4 a month. Okay. And you saw all the news that happened just this weekend. There's news every day with the DFW sports team, whether it be our beat, the Rangers, Cowboys, Mavs, Stars. Colleges are making news every day. So, and we're going to expand our college coverage. So yeah, do it now. ALLCITY.com. Join up, become a diehard, get you a free shirt, 20% off all events that we're going to have down here in the future. We'll probably have something. I think we're probably working on something with the Rough Riders to catch a game out there one night. A lot of good things, cool things that come with being a diehard, including reading all of our copy. So do it today.
Yeah, we look forward to the events that are coming, and as we continue to grow, they're going to grow more and more. And I know a lot of you people will probably, if you already have a ticket to the Mavericks event on February 6th, that'll be somewhat therapeutic for you to get out there and see our Mavs crew. And hopefully we won't be commiserating too much about the game that night, which is against the Boston Celtics, a rematch of the finals, and yet somehow doesn't seem like it'll feel the same. But, you know, I mean, again, in fairness, you know, I don't know, fairness, nobody wants to hear anything good about Nico right now, I don't think. But he's thinking that in the short term, this is better for the team. They got a bunch of 30-something guys. You add this big defensive presence in the middle who's, you know, a good shot blocker and all that, and maybe they have a better chance to win now. I don't know. That seems hard for me to buy, but that's what he's selling.
Yeah, I want to, you know, what is this based on? I'd like to see, like, the defensive metrics. How much does Anthony Davis's defense affect the game? Because I really thought that even big guys these days play outside, you know, with Jokic and Maya, however you say his name. Even Anthony Davis takes three-pointers, and Karl Anthony Towns, you know. So is it that big of a difference? I don't know. Anyway, I guess we have some thoughts on this, John. This is a Rangers show.
But we don't do our Rangers show in a vacuum, right? I mean,
that's right.
stuff happens in this world, and it can shock us just as it shocks you. And of course, we've got opinions just as you do. So, because look, we're fans first, and as we've told you before, we probably don't say it enough, but the whole idea of ALLCITY when it started, and of DLLS as ALLCITY continues to grow, the whole idea here is to make being a fan even more fun. And that, I think Saturday night was a perfect example of that, because no fan just wanted to lie down and go to bed at midnight when you saw the news about Luka. You wanted to dive into it and figure out what the heck was going on, and we gave you that opportunity. So very cool. We finally see a movement with Jack Flaherty. He has signed reportedly, Jeff, with the Tigers. Back with the Tigers, by the way. He was there on a one-year deal last year. And then, of course, they traded him at the deadline. He went back home. He's from the Los Angeles area. Went back home to L.A. and had an opportunity to win a World Series ring. Pitched really well in the NLCS against the Mets. And he started 2 of the games in the World Series. I mean, that couldn't have worked out better for Jack Flaherty. He might have just stayed with the Tigers and been really excited that they made a late season run, right? But as it is, he won a World Series, and now he's right back there with the Tigers.
Yeah, the Tigers have been pretty calculated with their rotation signings. 1 and 2 year deals. Obviously, they have the reigning Cy Young winner coming back. So this is going to be a team that can pitch. And the bullpen was really good last year. So, hey, look out AL Central, look out Guardians and Royals too. Twins who haven't done anything this offseason, strangely, but they'll still be a decent club. So that's a pretty tough division. But yeah, if you got a good pitching staff in Detroit with the way that ballpark plays, you're in pretty good shape. So good for them. And I guess they're still in on Alex Bregman. That thing keeps dragging out. So that's a story that is probably going to pop here this week, I would assume. You would hope that whether you like Alex Bregman or not, and same thing with Pete Alonso, that that they aren't faced with the same things that Cody Bellinger and Blake Snell and our guy Jordan Montgomery faced last year, and Matt Chapman to a lesser degree because he signed a little bit earlier than they did. But the Boris 4, they are the Boris 2 at this point, I guess.
Yeah, and the reality is, I think with virtually all those players last year, the necessity for spring training was proven. And I know players every year, we're there every year, Jeff, and they always say, oh my God, we don't need all this spring training, right? And maybe they don't need that much. We think pitchers do, but we're not sure position players do. But you need some, right?
Yeah.
You need to get ready. And if everybody else has 6 weeks, you need 6 weeks. And so, I think last year was a cautionary tale in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, spring training is for starting pitchers. There's no doubt about it. That's why spring training is so long. The position players have to show up at some point because the window between pitchers, their first workout and games it's kind of shrunk here in the last few years. It's only, I think, 8 days. So they've got to get a lot of work done, including live batting practice and things like that. And they need guys to throw to. So, that's basically why position players show up later, but they're only showing up this year like 4 days before the first game. So, I mean, they're going to have to get in there and get going pretty quick. But yeah, Corey Seager learned last year the importance of spring training, I think. Nathaniel Lowe as well, though he was injured at spring training. When he came back, he was pretty rusty. So, there's value in it for everybody. And, relievers don't necessarily need to throw as much, but, a reliever can get hurt or sign late, because I think the Rangers still are going to try to sign a reliever, maybe not a closer, but another bullpen guy. And so I think that's, it's just a starting. This is 4 starting pitchers, and obviously they're the most important part of your team.
Yeah, they are. There's no doubt. They start everything, and even the guys who want to say pitchers, the former players who want to say pitchers aren't athletes and all that. They realize, it's all about starting pitching, especially when you get to the playoffs. So, that's why, as Jeff mentioned, that's why there is spring training. Another signing, and this is another guy who goes to a minor league deal. The Yankees get Carlos Carrasco. Speaking of the Guardians, which you were, Jeff. So, they're not. I don't think they're done yet either. I think the Yankees are still looking for infield help at the big league level as well.
Yeah, Carrasco, Cookie, I think that's his nickname. He's not as potent as he once was, but he still keeps getting big league jobs, and I'd imagine he'll end up logging some pretty serious innings this year for a team. But you're right. I think all teams are looking, at the right deal. You keep hearing the Padres are trying to, maybe they're entertaining offers on Dylan Cease, which seems a little surprising. But they did not get Sasaki. Their ownership is embroiled in a legal matter among family members, who inherited the franchise. It seems, and they have a ton of big contracts too. And Cease is going to be a free agent after this season. So I think the Padres might be built on a house of cards. I really do. That could turn south quick if this ownership thing goes the wrong way, and then whoever ends up with control of the club doesn't want Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado making that much money. Maybe something like that can turn the tide real quick. But AJ Preller's there, former Rangers assistant, the international wild man, and he's pretty wild as a GM, making trades and all that stuff. But in that division too, it feels like trading Cease is kind of like waving the white flag to the Dodgers. That was the best series of the playoffs last year, was the Padres and the Dodgers. So go out there and good pitching stops good hitting every day of the week. So that one's a little surprising on the Cease front to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. So while I'm mentioning the Dodgers, they had a bunch of the players go out this weekend, and it's a annual event, but they take a polar plunge. So a bunch of them were out there and just I didn't see anybody in Speedos, thank goodness, but they were in their swim trunks, and they jumped off of a pier at Manhattan Beach. And when I first just saw the headline and a picture of all these freezing cold Dodgers players, I was like, oh, wow, where'd they went to somebody's hometown in Minnesota or Michigan or somewhere to do the polar plunge. Hell, they did it in Manhattan Beach. I don't know what I'm sure. Look, I will say this. The water there is pretty cold in July. So probably this time of year it's probably fairly polar, but it still is Southern California.
Right. Yeah, I think we learned about it in, I don't know, junior high school or high school, about the currents and the lines of longitude, and the ocean towards San Diego and LA is a little bit chillier. But yeah, this is not a polar plunge in your truest sense.
No, but the good thing about it was that and they've got a charity that's been, the beneficiary of this polar plunge year in and year out. This year, they kind of split the money between the normal charity and a charity that is to benefit the first responders who were just, unbelievable. I had an opportunity to watch most of the Grammy Awards last night. I still like to, dive into my inner music self, and the first responders, needless to say, were front and center. They were on stage. They presented awards. I mean, it was really cool to see them honored for all the things that they did to help so many people, as best they could against a monolithic fire that was, just so difficult to contain. So anyway, that's one of the beneficiaries of the of the Dodgers polar plunge. So that's going to do it for this edition of the DLLS podcast. Tomorrow, we believe we'll be back in studio, and we believe we'll be back at noon, and we believe that'll be the case all week long. And as Jeff mentioned, we may just have a surprise for you on Thursday. Still working on it. So
still working it.
Yep.
But
we appreciate it. Yep. Join us again tomorrow and all week long at noon on the DLLS Rangers podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.